Then Jeek asked Sarin how he could show his respect for the man who would kill his master today. Sarin was greatly angered by JK's statement, but the old man stopped him and tried to calm him down. Jeek said that this old man did nothing for this wolf except give him clothes. Meanwhile, the old man was still trying to calm Sarin down, reproaching him that if he did not learn to restrain his error, he would not be able to control himself in battle. Sarin told his master that he could not restrain himself while someone spoke like that about his teacher. Then the old man told Sarin not to worry about this, since every action has its own reasons. After this, the old man handed his fan to Sarin and told Jeek that he wanted to show this guy his sword in action. Jeek took out his sword and told the old man that if his new student would only watch, then he was ready to show him his sword in real combat. Then the old man thanked Jeek and told him that his sword, which he called White Water, was also ready to join the battle. The old man took out his sword and told Jeek that he had not used his sword since his last puma. Then Jeek defiantly waved his sword and said that for the old man and his sword, this would be the last and shortest battle. Jeek and the old man got into their fighting poses and prepared for their final pim. Jeek attacked first to knock the old man down and quickly overpower him. However, the old man turned out to be more resilient and he easily interrupted JK's attack. A moment later, the old man suddenly found himself behind Jeek, but Jeek himself managed to notice the old man behind his back and repel his sudden attack. After repelling the old man's attack, Jeek turned towards him and tried to attack him. JK's attack, he told him that even though so much time had passed since their last meeting, Jeek had not changed at all. The old man also told Jeek that of all those with whom he had fought, he was the only one with whom his sword was so difficult to cope with in battle. However, TJC denied the old man's words and told him that he had changed a lot since their last meeting. Jeek also told the old man that if he believes that he has not changed in any way, then it is only because the old man himself decided to blindly believe in it. The old man agreed with Jeek and told him that the only thing that always remains the same in this world is change itself. At this moment, Jeek tried to attack the old man again, but the old man managed to repel his attack again. While the old man tried to get behind Jeek, he told him that now he does not feel the same sense of risk during battle that he felt many years ago. During the battle, the old man decided to tell Jeek a story about how recently a man with the title of the strongest man in the world decided to challenge the old man to a fight and show him his fighting skills. Landing on one bamboo shoot, the old man told Jeek that that fight did not bring the old man a bit of pleasure. Starkey also said that warriors with such titles usually live solely with a sense of their own superiority over others. At that moment, Jeek told the old man that he was not much different from such people, after which he immediately attacked the old man. While the old man was trying to hold off JK's attack, he saw an unnatural glow in his eyes, and he assumed that Jeek could see him. Jeek told the old man that people like him never accept that there are always people who will be superior. Then Jeek concentrated all his strength on this blow and said that it was for this reason that the old man and his people did this to him. The old man jumped aside and told Jeek that he and his people had really treated him so meanly. Then the old man attacked Jeek and told him that no one ordered them to do this to him, and this decision was made by everyone at the same time. The old man also told Jeek that they did this because they would not be able to match his strength level, since at that time he became the first to master the first two skills of his sword. When Jeek stood on the same bamboo stalk as the old man told Jeek that in every person's life there is always a wall that will not allow him to achieve his desired goal. While Jeek tried to attack the old man said that it was he who became such a wall for him. The old man told Jeek that he and his men who had treated Jeek so could not afford for him to surpass them in combat skills. After that Jeek and the old man came down from the bamboo shoot, and Jeek told the old man that he had chosen not the best way to ask for his forgiveness. Then Jeek said that it was finally time for them to end this fight as soon as possible, with which the old man completely agreed. Then Jeek decided to use his first skill to defeat the old man as quickly as possible. The old man was not going to dodge JC's attack, and he decided to take all the damage. JC's impact turned the sky blue, making it seem like daylight for a moment. When all the dust cleared, Jeek saw in the distance a seriously wounded old man who was barely able to stand on his feet. Jeek was somewhat surprised that the old man decided to take the full blow on himself instead of trying to save himself. The old man said that it was exactly like that, but he admitted that it was not easy for him to withstand such an attack. Then Jeek decided to use his next technique to surely defeat the old man. This time, the old man also did not resist, and he said that it was a great honor for him to witness another technique of Jeek. Jeek then began to swing his sword around himself to use his second skill, which he called the moon hiding the sky. While Jeek was preparing his reception, the moon appeared in the sky, illuminating the battlefield between Jeek and the old man with its rays. Everything happened so quickly that Bean, even with his eyes wide open and not looking away from the battle for even a second, did not have time to see what exactly happened at that moment. Bean saw Jeek in front of him, a few meters away from whom the old man was lying. Soren could not accept that JC had deprived him of his teacher, and he immediately attacked Jeek. However, Jeek managed to react and easily push the enraged Soren away from him. Despite such a strong blow, Soren suffered virtually no damage from such a blow. At that moment, the old man rose to his knees and thanked Jeek for choosing not to kill the young and knave Soren. Jeek told the old man that he was not like him at all, and that he was capable of showing mercy to those who might pose any threat to him. Then the exhausted old man told Jeek that he had honestly won this fight and that the victory rightfully belonged to him. The old man also apologized to Jeek for deciding to express his sincere regrets to him so late. The old man told Jeek that he was not saying this because he lost, as he would have liked to apologize to Jeek anyway. After that, the old man raised his head up and asked Jeek to fulfill his last request if possible. The old man looked at Soren and asked Jeek to keep an eye on him, since he had not yet fully taught him humanity. Instead of complying with the old man's request, Jeek leaned his sword against the old man's shoulder, from which he concluded that this was too arrogant a request. Jeek only told the old man that he remained the same arrogant and shameless old man. After this, Jeek made it clear to the old man that he would not fulfill his request and left him. After this, the exhausted old man turned to Bean and asked him to come to him. Then the old man asked Ben what his name was, and then introduced himself to him as Song Bin. The old man told Bean that he had a very beautiful name, and he asked him what he usually did. Bean told the old man that he had originally studied for the second national exam, but despite his efforts, he failed it. Then the old man thought that Bean had read a lot of books since he passed his first exam. Then the old man looked at Soren and asked Bean to teach Soren humanity if possible. Bean looked at Soren's lying body and said that he was unlikely to cope with such a difficult task. The old man agreed with Bean's statement and asked him again if he could train him when the time came and their destinies were intertwined. Bean thought for a moment and said that in that case he might be able to cope with such a task. Then the old man grabbed Bean's hands and thanked him sincerely, while Bean was scared that the old man had bloody hands. After this, the old man pointed to his sword to Ben and asked Ben to bring it. When Bean walked up to the sword and took it in his hands, the old man told him that his sword had an extremely willful character. When Bean picked up the old man's sword, he noticed that the sword felt colder than ice. The old man looked at his sword and said that he thought that his sword would not reject Bean. The old man also said that if his sword had rejected Bean, he would have cut off his hand, which scared Bean very much. After that, Bean moved his hand over the sword and said that this sword was extremely beautiful. Starkey completely agreed with Bean and told him that in his entire life he had never seen anything more beautiful than this sword. After this, the old man told Bean that the sword now belonged to him, which surprised Bean very much. The old man handed his sword to Bean and told him that he could consider this sword as compensation for his request to look after Soren. Bean looked at this sword and thought that when he touched this sword, he believed that this sword was the rarest item in the world, and that he was simply not worthy to wield it. Then the old man asked Bean to just keep it with him, since he was not sure that he was worthy of this sword. The old man said that if Jeek had not defeated him, he would have given his sword to Soren, but he was sure that some villains on the street would simply rob him and steal the sword. Then Ben decided to keep the sword for himself, and at one moment he felt that the sword was now somewhat warm. As Bean and Jeek descended from the canyon, Soren laid down on the lap of the old man, who told him that every fateful meeting ends with the last meeting. The old man also told Soren that if a person is filled with a feeling of attachment, Then the path of heaven opens to him, and the old man's path of attachment became attachment to Sauron. Sauron was very worried about the old man's condition, to which he said that he would leave this world only when Sauron fell asleep. The old man thanked Sauron for everything he had done for him, and he said that other people considered him a savior, but he believed that he was not one at all. The old man also told Sauron that after his last meeting with Jeek, he would be able to heal his soul and realize how terrible things he had done in the past. Before his death, the old man raised his head up and began to look at the moon and admire the incredible beauty of the starry sky, which he had not paid attention to before. The old man also thought that the heavenly paths had always been sacred, and only now they showed him the severity of his actions. A few minutes later, Sauron fell asleep, and his master, as promised, left him alone in this world. The next day, the mutant clan announced the death of the great golden crane to the whole world. No one knew the exact cause of death of the golden crane, and everyone assumed that he decided to peacefully leave this world without unnecessary witnesses. To pay tribute to the golden crane and pray for its rebirth, the mutant clan declared a more period that lasted 100 days. A lot of people came to honor the memory of the golden crane who had left this world, and the loss was so colossal for everyone that even the emperor deigned to come to the burial site and express condolences. The entire farewell ceremony showed how much people loved and respected the golden crane. Mutant clan members did not publicly divulge information about the golden crane's last disciple and the location of his white water wed. While Bean slept, he kept dreaming about JC's last battle, which he remembered down to the smallest detail. In his dream, Bean very often saw the blade of his master, and it seemed to him that the blade seemed to want to tell him something. At one point, Bean suddenly woke up from unbearable nightmares in which he saw the golden crane dying over and over again. When Bean woke up, he saw a strange glow that came from the linen in which the blade was wrapped. Bean got up from the bed and took the blade in his hands, and he felt that the white water seemed to be crying because of the loss of its owner. The next morning, Bean went down to see Jahu to see if he slept well. Jeek told Bean that he didn't sleep well, as did Binu, who still couldn't forget JC's battle with his master yesterday. Bean thought that the master had died, and Jeek confirmed his words by telling him that his master died without any regret. Jeek said that his master died with such ease in his soul because he accomplished and received what he really wanted. However, Ben still couldn't shake the idea that he really deserved the right to hold in his hands the blade that the golden crane had given him. Being told Jeek that he was constantly haunted by the thought that he was not worthy of this blade, to which Jeek told him that nothing in this world comes easy to a person. Jeek told Bean that some people can easily cope with any difficulties while they cannot cope with them at all. After breakfast, Ben and Jeek left the hotel grounds and headed to a special place in the city. Once at the place, Ben and Jeek were met by a man who escorted them to the table assigned to them. When Bean and Jeek sat down at their table, the man who escorted them told them that he would report their arrival to the master right away. A couple of minutes later, Ben and Jeek saw a beautiful and charming girl approach them and greet the guests. First of all, Jake asked the girl where Wal, who played the Zitha very well, was now, to which the girl only said that even the moon wanes and becomes invisible to humans. The girl said that she is not as good at playing the zither as Wal, but she still plays well enough not to fall on her face and embarrass herself in front of the guests. After this, the girl introduced herself to the guests as Nanang, after which Jake introduced her companion Ben. A variety of delicious food was brought to the table for B and Jeek. When Nangan asked Jeek how he was doing, Jeek told her that Ben, who kept records of him and whom Jeek allowed to see the art of his sword in practice, could tell her about it. Nanan was very surprised that Ben was so lucky, while Ben himself did not understand why Nanhan was so surprised. Then Nanan invited Ben to fill his cup with wine again, and Ben immediately handed her his cup. When Nanan poured a full cup of wine for Bin turned his attention to the pleasant aroma of the wine. As Bin prepared to drink the wine, Nanhan told him that she was somewhat jealous of him in some way. When Bin drank all the wine in one gulp, he assumed that Nangan was jealous of the fact that he was traveling with Jeek. When Bin drank his wine, he immediately felt sick, and Nanan began to worry about B. However, after a couple of seconds, Bin felt better and told Nanhan that this was simply excellent wine. Then Nangan asked Bin to remember how she served wine when the flower petals fell again. After this, Ben asked Yanhan what kind of place it was, to which she replied that it was the garden of a private brothel where very important and honorable guests were received. At one point, JC told Nanhan that the white water no longer had an owner, which greatly frightened Nanhan herself. Then Yanhan believed that in the near future there would be a lot of noise about this in Hub Province. Hoyu Province would soon be noisy, while Jeek asked what was happening in Yunnan Province. Nanning told Jeek that now there is a beautiful and wild area, but just recently, the Jane Shaw River overflowed its banks, passed by Yunnan, and flooded all of Xinjiang. Jeek said that even if the Jinsha River flooded the whole world, it would be important to him that Yunnan remained safe and sound. Jeek said that this is very important for him, since he will have to evaporate all the water with all his might, get to the dragon, and kill it. Nanan told Jeek that even if he was able to turn the whole world upside down, he still would not be able to go to the Jade Dragon. Jeek told Nanhan that this did not stop him at all in this situation, since he believed that in this matter one should trust not force but one's wisdom. Nanan said that she did not expect to hear such a thing from Jeek, since it was Jeek who used his power so that in the end the Jade Dragon simply ran away. Jack believed that W told her about this, but Nangan said that the Jade Dragon himself told her about it. Nangan said that her conversation with the Jade Dragon happened a long time ago, and at that time he told her that he was extremely surprised that there was a person in the world who could pacify with his power. Jeek believed that the Jade Dragon simply left here as suddenly as it appeared, and he also heard that the ferocious tiger from Sichuan province was also here. Nangan told Jeek that a fierce tiger comes here every time the season changes. After this, Nangan offered her zither playing to the guests, since she had raised such a difficult topic for conversation. As the evening approached, Ben and Jeek were about to leave the garden grounds, and Ben couldn't help but show his true admiration for Nangan for her hospitality and her outstanding performance. After that, Bean caught up with Jeek and asked him how they could not pay for all the services, to which Jeek said that he had already paid, even a little more for everything. Being believed that JC's next opponent was the Jade Dragon, to which Jeek told him that he was now going to fight the ferocious tiger. Bean remembered from a conversation between Jeek and Yenin that the ferocious tiger was in Sichuan province, and he believed that he and Jeek would have to return there. However, Jeek said that there is no need for this, as the ferocious tiger comes here every time the season changes. That night, Jake went to train again, while Bin recorded his every move. When Jeek told Bean that his training was done for the day, Bean was a little confused that Jeek wouldn't ask him what exactly he wrote today. Jeek told Bean that there was no need for this, since he believed that in time Bean himself would understand what he should see and write down in his book. Returning to his room, Ben could not forget JC's words that over time he himself would be able to understand everything. After this, Bean began to review his notes, and he came to the conclusion that most of his notes were extremely terrible. Bean believed that his records were poor precisely because they were all done in a hurry. While Bean was going through all his notes, he noticed that according to his notes, Jeek talks a lot. Having sorted through some of his notes, Bean came up with a very full story about the arc of the Sword of Jeek. Bean later felt that non-MMM people who read these notes would not be able to understand most of the important details that portrayed JC as a person. Bean decided to recompile his notes several more times, and each time it seemed to him that his notes were just as incomprehensible. At one point, Bean noticed that some passages of his notes had the same meaning, and he decided to rearrange his notes once again. Having rearranged all the notes, Bean finally got a coherent and understandable narrative. When Bean was convinced of the consistency of the entire resulting text, he decided to rewrite the entire text into a clean book. While Bean was rewriting his text, he thought about how coherent and intelligible the information he was writing down could be. At this point, Bean also did not hesitate to supplement his notes with new statements. When Bean finally finished his book, Bean thought that his notes would now be much easier for other people to understand. After this, Bean wondered what he should title his notes, and he decided to title them Dark Sky Interpretation. The next morning, Bean decided to show JC the result of his observations, and Jeek was somewhat confused by the fact that he actually talked a lot. Jeek also told Bean that he really liked how Bean decided to call this book, but he did not understand why everything in this book was described as superficially and without details. Being told Jeek that he didn't see the point in having a lot of records, and he felt that these records would be enough. Jeek told Bean that although Bean was well versed in how books should be written, he should not be so lenient with these notes. Jeek also told Bean that a lot of meaning can be hidden in the lines, but at the same time, everything that is written between the lines should not be ignored. Bean told Jeek that he had never given it any special meaning before. For many days, Bean and Jeek continued to go out at night for Jay to train, while Bean continued to record everything Jeek did with the same attention. One evening, Bean asked Jeek why they were still on the west coast if Jeek said that someone from these parts was watching them. Jeek said that they should not worry about the spy because recently Jeek heard that the pursuer had mistaken his target, after which he returned to Hub. After this, B asked Jeek when the ferocious tiger would arrive in these parts, to which Jeek said that it would happen soon. Jeek said that the ferocious tiger was cautious but ice and impatient, and before attacking its prey, it would lie low and it would attack only when it was sure that everything was in order. However, Jeek believed that despite all these qualities, the ferocious tiger's curiosity would become his fatal weakness. Being believed that the ferocious tiger was an extremely dangerous opponent, to which Jeek said that as long as they knew about all his techniques and weaknesses, then nothing threatened them. After this, the same man whom they met in the garden came into Ben and Jek. The mysterious Cirrus man whispered something to Jeek, and Ben heard something about the arrival of a ferocious tiger. EJC told Bean that the ferocious tiger would arrive tonight, and that their battle would take place today. A few minutes later, Ben and Jeek left the hotel grounds and went by cart to the meeting place with the ferocious tiger. On the way, JC handed B a small box, upon opening which Ben saw something black and round in it. JC told Bean that if he felt in danger, he should put it in his mouth, and if the situation got worse, he would have to eat it. Jeek also told Bean that he should under no circumstances lose this thing, since in case of danger this thing would have to save his life. Bean was very frightened that this time he too might be in danger in battle. Jeek reminded Bean that today he would fight a fierce tiger, and if Bean was worried about his life, then he could go back. A few minutes later, Ben and Jeek arrived at the right place, where a ferocious tiger was already waiting for them. Before Jeek spoke to the ferocious tiger, he reminded Bean that if he remembered everything Jack told him about the ferocious tiger, then he would be fine. After this, the fierce tiger turned to Jeek and told him that he was incredibly glad to see him again. Jeek told the fierce tiger that he was still that person whose words and actions never matched. Jeek also told the ferocious tiger that this is the reason why he is standing here, as he promised. The fierce tiger reminded Jeeka on one day of their meeting, a simple man died instead of Jeek, because of which the fierce tiger's sword was desecrated forever. Also, the fierce tiger told Jeek that since then he has not been able to carry his blade on his own, and now a special person always walks with him who constantly carries his sword. Jeek became very angry when the ferocious tiger reminded him of that ill-fated day, after which he took his sword and a powerful shock wave came from it. The ferocious tiger realized that JC had guessed that before the battle, a special poison was distributed at the site of the future battle. Jeek told the ferocious tiger that he was well aware that the ferocious tiger was always ready to benefit from the resulting chaos. The fierce tiger said that it was not he who sprayed the poison, but the one who held his sword, and that he knew that such a technique would not work with Jeek. The fierce tiger pointed to his assistant and said that despite such little experience, he had many different skills. After this, the fierce tiger introduced his assistant as Soul Gum, who has been following his master for a long time and serves him faithfully. After the ferocious tiger introduced his assistant, he immediately threw a stone at Jeek. However, Jeek managed to catch the stone rushing towards him, and he told the ferocious tiger that he still takes every opportunity to surprise his enemy. The ferocious tiger told Jeek that he believed that using his opportunity to attack was not only not shameful but even right. When the ferocious tiger asked Jeek who was behind him, Jeek told him that this person was simply observing his actions and recording everything that happened. At first, the ferocious tiger did not fully understand why Jeek needed this guy, and Jeek told him that this guy was putting what he saw on paper so that later people around the world would know his story. Fierce Tiger thought it was a great idea, but he felt it would be a little wrong to write Jek's story from only one point of view. Then the Fierce Tiger said that his notes should also complement all the events taking place, after which he ordered Gut to start writing too. After this, Gam spread his cloak on the floor of the gazebo, took out his master's sword, and deliberately cut his finger. At one point, Bean stopped writing, and he became very disgusted to look at what Gam had just done. While Gum was writing with his blood, the ferocious tiger asked Jeek which writing would be more believable, writing in ink or writing in blood. Jeek told the fierce tiger that people would definitely find out that he forced the child to do something disgusting. Meanwhile, Bean was very worried that GMA had to write with his blood, and he said that he was ready to share his ink, brushes and paper with him if only he would stop writing with his blood. At that moment, the ferocious tiger told G that his actions seemed a little abnormal to Bean and Jeek, and he asked Gam not to pay attention to them. Then Jeek told the ferocious tiger to stop pretending to be a good person, since he believed that the ferocious tiger was too strong to behave so inappropriately. The ferocious tiger was surprised that Jeek himself, who had the skills to master the dark sky, recognized him as a strong person. In response, Jay prepared his sword for battle and told the ferocious tiger that it was not only about his cunning and skills in handling various poisons. JC told the fierce tiger that the reason he wanted to fight him was because the fierce tiger had a poison art which was considered the most powerful martial art. In response, the fierce tiger grinned and told Jeek that after hearing what he had heard, he finally had a fighting spirit, after which he ordered Gut to give his master the sword. When Dom handed the sword to the ferocious tiger, he invited Bean to go into the gazebo, since from there it would be more convenient to record everything that was happening. Bean thought it would be dangerous, and Jeek told him that he had nothing to worry about and could go into the gazebo. While Bean was walking towards the gazebo, the ferocious tiger stopped him and told him that after the fight they could go to some good restaurant together and drink something. But Bean was disgusted to hear this. Bean entered the gazebo, sat down on the floor next to Gam, and began to watch carefully so as not to miss anything important. Bean decided to ask Gam if everything was okay with him, from which Gam immediately began to shout at Bean for trying to show him a feeling of pity and sympathy. When Gam stopped yelling at Bean, Bean took a closer look at Gam, and it seemed to him that Gam was actually a girl. Meanwhile, the fierce tiger took out his sword and said that he had been planning to simply destroy his sword for a very long time. Jeek and the fierce tiger prepared to fight, and the fierce tiger noticed that this brought back some memories from the past. JC believed that the ferocious was simply stalling for time, and he was sure that his opponent was interested in something other than a simple battle. At that moment, the fierce tiger pounced on Jeek with lightning speed and told him that he would like to ask his sword about it. Despite such a quick attack, Jeek managed to block the ferocious tiger's attack with his sword. The ferocious tiger naively believed that Jeek was still unable to withstand his blow. The fierce tiger tried to attack Jeek again and said that he was not at all worried about this fight, since he knew that the white water blade had a new owner. However, the fierce tiger believed that there was no person in the world who could compare with the golden crane. After JC repelled another attack from the ferocious tiger, he said that he would finish Jeek. However, Jeek was completely confident in his victory and he told the fierce tiger that today he would die. After a couple of seconds, Jeek again dispelled all the poison that the ferocious tiger had spread. The ferocious tiger was shocked that Jock was able to withstand his best move. The ferocious tiger was shocked that Jock could still easily stand on his feet, since even immortal beings could not resist this technique. After Jay cleared away all the poisonous fog, he proceeded to perform his first move. When Bean saw JC prepare to use his first move, Bean was almost completely confident that the ferocious tiger would not be able to do anything against this move. The fierce tiger tried to block JC's first move, but the blow was so heavy that the fierce tiger's sword simply broke and crumbled into small pieces. The ferocious tiger was furious, and he could not understand how Jeek managed to damage his blade so easily. Jeek told the fierce tiger that his poisonous art was effective in close combat, but the fierce tiger itself would not approach its enemy until he was sure of his victory. Jeek also told the ferocious tiger that if he does not use all his skills to their full potential, he will definitely die. Then the ferocious tiger took out his short dagger and attacked Jeek in the hope of defeating him. Despite such a terrifying appearance and behavior of his opponent, Jeek did not even try to dodge or block the attack. When the ferocious tiger finally reached Jeek, he repelled his opponent's attack and threw him aside. When the fierce tiger ran past Jeek, he turned his sword back and plunged it straight into the fierce tiger's back. After this, Jeek immediately pulled out his sword from his opponent, and the ferocious tiger fell to the ground, not showing any signs of life. When the fight ended, Ben immediately jumped up and wanted to ask Jeek if everything was okay with him. However, at this moment, Gam immediately stood behind Ben and placed her poisonous knife against Ben's throat. B was very frightened by the current situation, and Jack did not understand what exactly Gam wanted to do. Jam told Jeek that Bean was in danger now, and if any of them made even the slightest move, she would kill him immediately. At one point B noticed how his own blood began to slowly flow down his arm. Almost immediately, Bean remembered how a ferocious tiger touched his hand as he walked towards the gazebo, causing blood to flow down his hand. Then, Jeek ordered Bean to drink right now the medicine that he gave him before the fight. Gam told Jeek that even if Bean took this medicine, there would still be poison in his body which would turn the rest of Bean's life into endless torment and suffering. Gam also told Jeek that she was ready to remove all the poison from Ben if they fulfilled all her conditions. Jeek understood that Ben was now in a hopeless situation, and he decided to listen to all the conditions of Gam. First of all Gam demanded the opportunity to inherit all the things of her grandfather whom Jeek killed. Gima's second condition was that Ben and Juk remember her real name, Dan Warang, which meant Snowblade. Warang also promised Juk that one day she would take revenge on him for the death of her grandfather. Ja-huk told Warang that if she lets Ben go, he is willing to follow her terms. However, instead of simply letting Bing go, Wien first stuck her poison knife directly into his shoulder. After that, Wing poked Benin in the back several times with her fingers, causing B to lose consciousness and begin to fall, but Warang managed to catch his lifeless body. The next day, Ben woke up and realized that he was not yet dead after Wang's prank yesterday. When Jeek asked Ben if his arm was okay, Ben took off his outfit and saw a completely bandaged shoulder. When Jeke asked Bean how he was feeling, Bean said that his arm was a little stiff, and it was a little difficult for him to move it. Ja-huk told Ben that Wien kept her promise and she removed the poison from B's body, and said that she had excellent skills with various poisons. When B asked Ja-huk what Warang was doing with the ferocious tiger's body, Juk said that in life, the ferocious tiger was a paranoid person who never shared his powers and skills with his family. Jeek also told Bean that the ferocious tiger either kept each of his items, which contained part of his power, among his loved ones, or inherited these items from his ancestors. Juk looked at Warren and said that she pays respect to her grandfather's body and inherits all the things that belong to him. Juk also said that this is how Warang performs the entrance ceremony, and after a few minutes, Warang stands in front of Ben and Juk and tells them that she is finished. Juk thanked Warang for saving Bing, even though she was the one who poisoned him. Warang told Jahu that he shouldn't thank her, as one day she would still find and kill him in the name of her late grandfather. Before leaving, Ben bowed to Wayan and also thanked her for saving his life, after which B went after Juk. While B and Juk were descending from the mountain, Wayan looked at Juk's back and did not understand how he managed to survive after her bloody suffocating fog. Warang believed that Juk was not a person, since the bloody suffocating fog had no effect on his body. Before Ben and Jahu could leave, Warang called out to Ben and threw something in his direction. A second later, Being caught the hilt of the ferocious tiger's sword, and he didn't know what he should do with it. Warang told B that she would lend this hilt to Ben for a while, so that the hilt would relieve some of the pain in Ben's hand. Warang also told B that for the next 3 days, Ben would experience unbearable pain in his arm, against the background of which a person would simply want to die just to no longer feel this pain. Wing also told Ben that he should never take any pills in hopes of getting rid of the pain, since Ben must endure all this unbearable pain himself. Warang also told Ben to keep this hilt, since in a few days she would come back for him and take him away. Finally, Warren once again reminded Ben and Ja-huk of her name, after which she instantly disappeared before their eyes. The next day, members of the Dan family notified all residents of Sichuan province about the death of Dan Bio, who was the ferocious tiger, since it was he who stood at the head of the entire family. On the day of the funeral, a huge number of people, including many Murom warriors, went to Sichuan province to honor the memory of one of the strongest Murom warriors. However, ever many were surprised when they learned that the entire process of Dan Bu's funeral enchanting was led by his granddaughter, Dan Wayan. After the funeral ended, Dan Warren, together with her subordinates, decided to take measures to officially take over the post of head of the entire Dan family. Soon, Dan War became the new head of the Dan family, and a little later, the warrior Mum who tried with all her might to be a worthy leader and who wanted to show her family from the bright side. For several days, while Ben and Juke headed to Hunan, Ben carefully monitored his wound, and he was surprised that contrary to one's words, he did not experience any severe symptoms. After that, being rummaged among his camping things, pulled out the hilt of a ferocious tiger's sword, and didn't understand what he should do with it now. Bean told Jeek that he still couldn't stop thinking about the ferocious tiger and his blade. Jeek told Bean that he could do with the hilt as he saw fit, and Bean thought it best to throw the hilt away. Before Bean had time to throw the handle outside, Jeek asked him if a person could get rid of his past and forget about his mistakes that could put him at a disadvantage in the future. Bean looked at Jeek and told him that a person should under no circumstances forget about his past mistakes, since he will not be able to build a strong future on the basis of the mistakes of the past. Bean also told Jeek that any person's path to his formation begins with his past regrets, on the basis of which the formation of his thinking of responsibility is built. Jeek then told Bean that this hilt was his reminder of his worst past mistakes, and he told Bean that this hilt would help him in writing his story. After thinking a little about JK's words, Bean decided to keep this hilt with him. After some time, Bee and Jeek arrived in Hunan province, and the first thing they did was go to the Yang fortress, which stood on the shores of Lake Donging. Once at the very top of Yang Tower, Ben was amazed by the views, as at first glance it seemed that there was no horizon between the sky and the lake, making it seem as if they were one. However, when Jeek also found himself at the very top of the tower, he only said that there was nothing to see from here, which simply killed all of Bean's desire to continue looking at the unity of the sky and the lake. Ben then reminded Jeek that Yang Tower was one of the 3 fortresses of Xinjiang. Bean also reminded Jeek that he himself wanted to be here, to which Jeek said that he promised one of his friends to one day meet in this place. Bean was greatly frightened by the fact that Jeek wanted to meet his friend here, and he believed that today his next mortal battle would take place in this tower. However, Jeek was somewhat confused by the fact that Bean thought that he would again fight someone to the death. However, Bean said that every time Jeek talked about some old friend, there would always be some kind of fierce fight in which Jeek killed his rivals. A couple of minutes later, a slightly elderly man and a young man climbed the tower and greeted Jake politely. Jahuk walked up to the older man with a good-natured smile on his face and greeted him back. After this, the old man asked Jeek who it was with him, and Jeek told him that Byrne was his traveling companion. After this, Be greeted his old friend. G introduced himself to him, and believed that this person was indeed his good friend. J, the elderly man, introduced himself to Ben as the Sword of Virtue, and he believed that Ben was also a warrior. Jeek told the older man that Ben was not a warrior, and the man approached Ben, shook his hands, and told him that no matter what, every meeting could be faithful. After this, the old man introduced Ben and Jeek to his son, who was called Iron Sword, and he said that he had heard a lot about Jeek from his father. Jeek greeted the young master, and the older man said that it would be nice to go downstairs and drink some wine. Despite such a tempting offer, Jeek had to refuse, as he still had some unfinished business. Then the elderly man believed that the rumors about the death of the Golden Crane in Hub Province were true. Jeek also told his friend that they should soon expect similar news about the death of a ferocious tiger in Saikan Province. Then the elderly man believed that Jeek was on his way to Yunnan Province. Jeek told his friend that he must finish what he started by any means necessary. The elderly man told Jeek that the Jade Dragon was too dangerous and unpredictable, and he suggested that Jeek go there together, since it would not be easy to defeat the Jade Dragon alone. However, Jeek told his friend that there was no need for this, since he came here to fulfill his old promise. The old man realized JK's attitude, and he told him that he would prepare for their PIM right now. A few minutes later, Jeek and his friend took out their blades and prepared to fight. Bean sat aside and prepared to write, and he was very happy that today Jahuk would fight to the death. Before the fight between JC and his friend began, Iron Sword sat down next to Bean and got to know him. Bean asked the Iron Sword for forgiveness for not being a Meram warrior, but this did not upset the Iron Sword itself. Iron Sword told Bean that he was looking forward to meeting them, since they were the same age, and he thought it would be nice to make friends with someone to cross swords with. Iron Sword also noticed that there were many different clans in near him, and few of these clans could be positively disposed towards another clan. Iron Sword believed that this was the reason his father became such good friends with Jeek. At one point, the battle between Jeek and his old friend finally began. The older man attacked first, but Jeek easily blocked his opponent's attack. Bean watched the battle and thought that he would call Hex's opponent an assertive blader rather than a noble one. Bean also noticed that the style of the noble sword was discreet, but at the same time quite fast and accurate. Bean also noticed that the noble sword was very heavy and even almost arrogant. However, despite all the skill of the noble sword, it seemed to Bean that some important details were missing in his movement. At that moment, the Iron Sword told Bean that it would be great if his little sister were here to see this whole fight. Iron Sword told Bean that his little sister doesn't understand at all why their father is the head of the Saga family. Bean was surprised that Noble Sword was actually the head of the Saga family, and he had never imagined that Noble Sword was such an important person. Before Iron Sword told Bean that even though his father's art is one of the strongest, he felt that Jeek was not ready to lose this battle. It also seemed to the Iron Sword that such battles occur extremely rarely, but Bean believed that this battle could not be compared with the previous battles of Jeek that he had seen. After this, the Iron Sword asked Bean what his opinion was on this matter, and at first Bean did not even know what to answer. At first, Bean told the Iron Sword that he was not a mum warrior, and all he could say was that the noble blade had an incredible fighting style. Bean also said that he seemed to understand how the noble sword moves in battle to remain unshakable and steadfast. However, despite all the skill of the noble sword, Bean said that he was not destined to win this battle, and the Iron Sword wondered why Bean thought so. Bean told the Iron and Sword that his father's style seemed to lack a bit of wildness. Bean said that a noble sword's movements followed a certain rhythm, but that rhythm could not be applied to an opponent whose style was more wild and unpredictable. Meanwhile, the battle between Jeek and the Noble Sword continued, and both warriors were equally determined to win. During the battle, Jeek noticed that his old friend was still as stubborn as ever, and that he never deviated from his path in life. The Noble Sword told Jeek that his path had some limitations that prevented him from losing all of his wild nature. Also, the Noble Sword said that if he reaches the peak in the mastery of his sword, then he will definitely have the opportunity to defeat his opponent and bring him to his knees. Jeek believed that his friend believed that he had reached the limit of his capabilities, and the Noble Sword wanted to show him this in practice. At that moment, the Iron Sword told Bean that his observations were very insightful and accurate, and he wanted to tell Bean what his father had once told him. Iron Sword said that his father once told him that if his life was limited only by his family, then over time this would become his weak point. Iron Sword believed that through his fight with Jeek today, he would be able to overcome his weaknesses. At one point, the Noble Sword moved somewhat away from Jeek in order to pounce on him and use one of his techniques. At this moment, Jeek also prepared to use his first move to defeat his friend in this battle. However, the Noble Blade's move was so fast that Jeek did not have time to complete his move, and his friend's blade ended up right in front of his face. However, Jeek was still able to use his technique, and after using it, the blade of his friend's blade was separated from his hilt. Even though JC managed to neutralize his friend, he was still surprised that he managed to get so close to him. The Noble Sword turned to Jeek and told him that this was his duty to protect technique. Then Jeek believed that when his friend told him about the peak of his capabilities, these were not empty words, and he actually had very little left to overcome it and achieve perfection. The Noble Sword bowed to Jeek and thanked him, after which the battle was over. After the battle, everyone went out onto the tower balcony, and the Iron Sword asked Bean for forgiveness for his naivety and lack of understanding of obvious things. The Iron Sword also told Bean that he most likely did not want to take his words seriously due to the fact that these words were very similar to what his father had told him before. Bean interrupted the Iron Sword and told him that his father's skill was one of the best he had ever seen. After this, Bean bowed before the Iron Sword and asked his forgiveness for criticizing his father so carelessly. Iron Sword then introduced himself to Ben by his real name, Moyanan, and told Ben that he would like to communicate more with him the next time they met. Meanwhile, the noble sword kept trying to help Jeek in his next battle, as he was very worried about his old friend. When Jeek asked his friend why he was so worried about him, the noble sword said that he felt both incredible heat and cold from Jeek's sword. B accidentally overheard JK's conversation with his friend, and he did not fully understand what exactly the noble sword meant when he told Jeek about the heat and cold from his sword. After this meeting, Ben and Jeek boarded a carriage and traveled to Gao in the heavy rain. In the cart, being told Jeek that his battle with the noble blade today had taught him not to emptily criticize someone else's fighting style. Jeek told Bean that Mum warriors communicate only through battles, since it is battle that allows them to understand each other's thoughts. Jeek also said that in battle, a warrior learns to think faster, and this allows him to learn to make decisions in a matter of seconds, which makes life much easier for the warrior in the future. Towards the evening, Ben and Jeek reached Ko, and finding themselves in one of the restaurants, Ben said that there were a lot of unique things here, and even the taste of tea and food here seemed somewhat different to him. While B and Jeek were having dinner, Jeek told B that tomorrow they could reach Yan. JK's look, Ben realized that something was wrong here, and Jeek realized that even Ben already understood everything, which made Jeek very ashamed. JK told Bean that soon they would finally be able to meet the one who was constantly pursuing them. While Ben was trying to understand what exactly Juk meant, Juan suddenly entered the restaurant. When Juan approached the table where Ben and Juk were sitting, Ben was extremely surprised that he saw her again. When Juan approached Ben and Ja-yuk's table, she addressed Ja-huk as her father and asked him to come back. Ben was extremely surprised by the fact that Juan was actually Ja's daughter. Juan asked her father to return as soon as possible while they still have the opportunity. Jeek put down his MPT glass and told his daughter that he had already come too far to back down. Jeek also told Juan that she also knows this very well, just as heaven and earth know about it. Juk also told Juan that she understands this even better than he does, and that she should stop trying to deceive herself. After this, Jeek wanted to introduce Bin to his daughter, who still did not fully understand the essence of what was happening. However, Juan interrupted Juk and told him that he had not changed at all, after which she turned her back on him and left the restaurant. While Ben looked with a stunned face towards the entrance where Juan came in and out, Juk only said that she didn't even let him finish. After that, Jeek looked at B, asked him for forgiveness for the situation that happened, and said that this girl was his daughter. After this, Ben suddenly jumped up from his position and asked Jeek how old he was, since he had a daughter who was about the same age as Ben himself. Crossing the guest room, told Bean that he stood on top of the Golden Crane Tower that day to help Bean. However, he did not interfere when he saw that his daughter had already helped Bean. After a couple of minutes, Ben finally understood everything, and he asked Jeek if his daughter was the person he was waiting for. JK told Bean that he was indeed expecting his daughter, as he needed a large bait to track and capture the J-Dragon. Bean believed that Ja-huk wanted to use his daughter as bait, but Ja-huk said that he would be the bait, while Juan should be a strong fishing line to pull out the J-Dragon. Ben started to worry a little about Juan, and Jiaohu told him that she is a persistent person, and that they will still meet her again in the morning. Meanwhile, Hassan set up a small camp near the hotel where she wanted to survive that night. The next morning, Bean and Jeek were about to head out on the cart to continue their journey. When Ben and Jeek reached the desired cart, they met Hassoon, who demanded to go with them, and Jeek was not against this decision of his daughter. At first Bean, Jeek, and Hassan sat in the carriage accompanied by a long, awkward silence. Bean said something, but she suddenly interrupted him. Juan said with resentment in her voice that initially she thought she had done Ben a favor, but now she felt like she was just making herself look like an idiot, and Ben didn't understand what Juan meant. Jeek then wanted to explain to Juan that Ben joined him after the events in the Tower of the Golden Crane, and that he only found out yesterday that she was his daughter, and he asked her not to be angry with Ben. Juan told her father that she was not at all angry with both of them, after which she gave an ominous look at her father, who simply could not look at his daughter with such a serious and ominous expression. Bean was surprised that Jeek averted his gaze from his daughter's gaze so abruptly, and he believed that Jeek was simply not able to resist such a look from his daughter. After that, Juan looked at Bean with the same look, and he, like Jeek, was greatly frightened by such a look. After this, Hwan asked Ben for forgiveness, as she felt that Ben and Jeek were just teasing her. However, Ben told Hwan that it was no big deal, and he decided to once again thank Hwan for how she helped him that day at the Golden Crane Tower. Hwan just smiled faintly at Ben and said that he was still the same as before. After a couple of seconds, the cart began to shake violently, and when all the shaking stopped, Jeek decided to get out of the cart and find out what was wrong. When Jeek got out of the cart, the coachman pointed him to a man who blocked their further path. After that, Jeek looked at the road and saw a young man on it, sitting on a piece of cloth in front of two blades. The first thing the young man did was ask if there was a Moonlight Blade Master among the passengers, and Jeek told the young man that he was that master. After this, the young man took the blades in his hand and told Jeek that he had a message for Jeek from the Jade Dragon. In the message, the Jade Dragon wanted to tell Jeek that he was incredibly happy that Jeek was going to find him. At the end of the message, the young man told Jeek that the Jade Dragon would like to meet Jeek in person with great pleasure. When the young man gave Jeek a message from the Jade Dragon, the young man pointed his blades towards his head to cut it off. Bean and Hassan were somewhat frightened by what this young man wanted to do, and Jeek picked up a small stone and with all his strength directed this stone towards the young man. Less than a second later, the stone hit the young man directly in the head, and the blow was so strong that the young man simply fell to the ground unconscious without having time to cut off his own head. Jeek told the fallen youth that even though he himself had decided to leave this life, he would not allow him to stain his path. While Ben and the coachman were incredibly surprised by what just happened, Jeek said that the Jade Dragon had prepared a very unusual and somewhat specific gift for him. The coachman noticed that the young man was still alive, and Jeek told him to simply drag the young man's body out of the way. While the coachman carried the young man's body as far away as possible, Ben, Jeek, and Hassan looked at each other and did not understand what kind of madness had happened in front of them. When Ben, Jeek, and Hwan returned to the carriage, Ben felt that the whole atmosphere around him had become tense and unpleasant. To brighten up the situation a little, Bean suggested that Jeek stay at a local hotel and have a little something to eat. Jeek said that they really should stay somewhere, and after a couple of minutes they arrived at the nearest hotel. Upon entering, Bean felt that there were a lot of people here, and he thought that this was due to the fact that this hotel was very close to the main road. As Bean, Jeek and Hwan sat down at their table, one of the employees approached them with several cups of tea so they could place their orders. Jeek and Hwan were silent, while Ben didn't understand why they weren't ordering anything. Then Bean asked the worker to bring them something simple and satisfying to the table, and the worker immediately went to the kitchen. Meanwhile, Bean drank tea and understood why people like local tea, as it had a calming effect on Bean. A couple of minutes later, the employee came to the table and handed Ben, Jeek, and Hwan each a portion of noodles with meat and vegetables. Bean was very happy that their order had finally arrived, and he wanted to try the local noodles as soon as possible. As soon as Ben had time to pick up the chopsticks, Jeek grabbed Ben by the shoulder and said that he shouldn't eat it, since all the food, in his opinion, was poisoned. Hwan also noticed that there was something wrong with all these people in the hotel. One of the workers was surprised that Jeek and Hassan figured everything out, since they did not show the least bit of hostility towards them. Jeek told the employee that he knew from the beginning that something was wrong with the establishment. Jeek also told the worker that usually when he finds himself in a crowded place, all the people immediately look at him, while none of the guests here paid any attention to him. Then the hotel worker finally realized that all this disguise turned out to be extremely ineffective. Jeek just calmly sat down, began to drink his tea, and told the worker that they had a hard and long journey ahead of them, and he would like to finish it all as soon as possible. However, the worker told Jeek that their journey would end here and now, after which he ordered all the visitors to attack Jeek. At this moment, dozens of patrons stood up from their tables and were about to pounce on Jeek, and some of them even had melee weapons in order to deal with Jeek as quickly as possible. As the hotel guests rushed towards Jeek, Hwan grabbed Ben from behind and told him to be as careful as possible. While the whole crowd of visitors attacked Jeek, he simply sat in his place without unnecessary worry and slowly drank his tea. When Jeek finished his tea, he took out his sword and swung it so hard that all the patrons flew away. Jeek's swing was so strong that he was able to demolish the entire hotel right down to the very foundation. After a few seconds, the hotel worker asked Jeek who he was and how no one else knew about a person with such great power. The worker also said that he is actually the head of a squad of shadow assassins. Jeek only told the head of the shadow assassin squad that he did not know him only because he was not worthy of knowing his name. A little later, Jeek realized that this head of the shadow assassin squad was the messenger of the Jade Dragon, and he told the head that the Jade Dragon knew him very well. The leader of the shadow assassin squad rose to his feet and said that he now fully understood his master's entire plan. After this, the head of the shadow assassin squad took out his blade, leaned it against himself, and began to shout to the Jade Dragon that he would offer his body as a sacrifice. However, this time Jeek also threw a stone at the head of the shadow assassin squad with all his strength so that he could not finish himself off in front of his eyes. After that, Bean, Jeek, and Hwan walked towards the cart, and Bean was worried that these people were now dead, to which Jeek told him that all these people were still alive. Having reached the cart, Jeek saw how its driver was lying under the cart and trying to free himself from it. Jeek helped the coachman, took him out from under the cart, asked him for forgiveness for the inconvenience, compensated him for all the damage received, and ordered him to return to Yang Tower. A couple of minutes later, Jeek took the reins and, together with Ben and Hein, he continued on his way to the Jade Dragon. Bean wanted to ask Jeek to drive the cart instead of him, to which Jeek told Bean that if he sat in the back there would be little space there. Then Ben had to remain sitting next to Hwan, accompanied by a long and awkward silence. Later, Ben asked Jeek and Hwan if they were okay after the tea they drank at the hotel. Jeek told Bean that he knew the Jade Dragon would be on guard, but there was no poison anywhere except in the food, and it wasn't even in the curtains or the table. Bean was terrified by the fact that poison could also be added to the curtains and table, and he did not understand why those visitors wanted to kill them. Jeek told Bean that the Jade Dragon knew from the very beginning that these people would not have been able to defeat him anyway. Jeek also said that the Jade Dragon would really like to desecrate his path by staining it with someone else's blood. Then Bean understood why that man decided to commit suicide by getting in the way of Jeek. Jeek also said that they have nothing to worry about now, and that similar situations can happen again, and he is able to deal with it as some kind of exciting game. Hwan was offended that her father thought killing people was an exciting game, and Jeek immediately said that it was not he who thought so, but the Jade Dragon. Hwan thought that her father was simply crazy, to which Jeek said that none of the 4 stars was sane, and that even he didn't think he was okay. Bean immediately told Jeek that he promised himself not to become the same as those people, and he sincerely believed that Jeek was much better than these people. Jeek told Bean that if he really felt that way, then he could breathe a sigh of relief. Jeek and Haesen reached another hotel that same day. Ben kept asking Jeek if everything was okay with the local food. Ben also thought that this time the tea might be poisoned, and Jeek told him that there was nothing wrong with the tea either. Then Bean drank the tea with some caution, which made him feel better, after which he began to eat his portion of noodles. At night, Bean went to bed because today they had a hard day and he thought that he should get a good sleep. However, after a while, Ben woke up again and he thought that today he should go outside and wait for Jeek there. A few minutes later, Bean was fully dressed and prepared to go outside at night. However, when Bean went outside, he saw Haesen, who also went outside to admire the night sky. Hwan told Ben that she would be happier if Ben called her Miss Han. Then Hwan said that it was entirely her fault that she didn't introduce herself properly that time. Then Hwan again introduced herself to Ben and thanked him for going on such a difficult journey with her father. Ben also introduced himself to Hwan and also thanked her for helping him that day at the Golden Crane Tower. Hwan told Ben that this was the 4th time he had thanked her for that incident, which made Bean feel a little embarrassed to realize this. At one point, Bean decides to ask Hasan why she is not sleeping and is here. Then Bean believed that Hasan also wanted to watch her father train. However, Hasan told Ben that she was not at all interested in how her father trained. Hwan told Ben that when she turned 7 years old, her father forbade her to watch him train. Ben did not understand why Jeek forbade his daughter to watch his training, to which Hwan only said that if he told her to go outside, then she should now go to him. After that, Ben and Juan left the hotel and headed to where Jeek was waiting for them. After a few minutes, Ben and Juan finally found the place where Jeek was waiting for them. When Ben and Juan got to Jeek, he said that he was a little tired of waiting. Then Ben immediately apologized to Jeek for the delay, explaining that he allowed himself to talk a little with Juan. Jeek then turned to Ben and Juan and said that he didn't say that to them. At one point, Bean felt some familiar discomfort, which he felt every time some kind of battle was planned. A moment later, a pair of armed men appeared a few meters from Jeek. The warrior with the spear said that Jeek is extremely strong since he was able to cope with the army of shadow assassins. However, the big axe warrior believed that the army of shadow assassins were ordinary weaklings, since they could only boast of their stealth, completely forgetting about real martial arts. Also, the warrior with the axe was somewhat confused by Jeek's height, since he was told that he was quite large. At that moment, a girl with a blindfold appeared, who also thought that Jeek could not match the Jade Dragon. After this, a lady with a fan came out and was somewhat unhappy that the 5 Yunnan generals had to meet in one place because of one person. Then the warrior with the spear was outraged that this lady with a fan equated him with the rest of the Yunnan generals. The lady with the fan explained to the warrior with the spear that this was what the Jade Dragon himself had christened them. Then the blindfolded woman told everyone to stop acting as arrogant as their master. Then the warrior with the axe also said that all this only caused him a feeling of despondency and melancholy. At one point, Juan simply couldn't stand it and asked the visiting generals how they could behave like that. The warrior with an axe, not expecting such insolence and impudence from Hassan, asked Juan how she could allow herself to speak to them like that. At the same moment, the lady with the fan politely told Juan that such a beauty should not be here. Then Juan took out her blade and told all the Yunnan generals who came that if they had something to say, then it was better for them to speak out during the battle. Then the warrior with the axe prepared his weapon and said that he would like to be the first to teach this girl a lesson. Then Juan told the warrior with the axe that it was impossible to listen normally and take his words seriously. The axe warrior became even more angry, and he was already preparing to attack Juan and told her that he would not give in even though she was a girl. Bean began to worry about Hassan, and he asked Jeek to intervene in this conflict, but Jeek told Bean that everything was under control and that Juan would handle it.